Vikings are right behind the Lions in the NFC North at 11-2. They got a pretty comfortable lead for a wild card spot. But Hawk, if there is a fatal flaw that could derail the Vikings, what is it?
Look, the Vikings are putting it all together at the right time, so we're splitting hairs here. But the running back, Aaron Jones, has had a bit of a fumbling problem over the last 4 games, so much so that Kevin O'Connell had to put him on the bench for a little bit. He was clean a week ago, but he does lead the league with fumbles lost. And it is of the utmost importance that KOC has all the confidence in the world in one of the biggest parts of this offense heading into the most important part of the season, which is the playoffs.
And by the way, you can see the Vikings as part of our Monday Night Football doubleheader next week. They'll host Caleb Williams and the Bears at 8.
All right. We don't need the plug for that. We know when this game is. The fatal flaw. I know it's just language, right? Fatal flaw. You know, we got to be dramatic. We got to get people watching and stuff like that. But I like Hawk was like, hey, we're splitting hairs here because they are coming together at the right time. I mean, the truth is they've been together from day one, from the jump. Quite frankly, when you really think about it, this has been one of the most consistent and complete and resilient teams in the NFL. No matter how you want to slice it, no matter what perspective you want to look at it, from an injury perspective, from a coaching perspective, from an offense, from a defense, bouncing back after a tough loss, bouncing back after a tough, referee call from whatever it may be, from a big win. Like they've answered the call every single time. Anything that you could say, oh, after you get a really big win, do teams kind of let off the brakes, or what happens? Yeah, they beat some bad teams. What happens when they play a good team? Oh, they had a really rough loss and Sam Darnold didn't play great. And that, are things gonna start to kind of unfold and unravel? Jefferson was a little mad because he didn't get as many touches as he would have liked. Like, is that gonna cause a rip? Like, all of these things that you could try your best to point out to be like, this is going to cause problems. This is going to cause problems. Never happened. Never any problems. No issues. Justin Jefferson, I think it was against the Rams, he was furious and he was, you could see him like cursing and like, I think he like slammed his helmet down or whatever. And like, it was like, uh-oh, is there trouble with the Vikings now? Like, is this it? Has their bubble popped? Sam Darnold. And it's just like, none of it happened. None of it. None of it, none of it, none of it. So this is clearly have been one of the most consistent, resilient top teams in the NFL. They've overcome their own levels of adversity. I'm not going to act like it was a ton of adversity, but they dealt with injury concerns, injury issues, having players in and out of the lineup, having some big, like legitimate injuries that they've had to kind of work around, and they found a way through it. So that's why this team has been so easy to root for and to kind of find the positive with them. And yeah, I mean, let's see, where did it show the stats here? There it is. 10% chance to win the NFC North. I wonder why that is. 10% seems a little low to me. So, let's see. They play the Seahawks, they play the Bears, the Seahawks, the Packers, the Lions. Obviously a very tough schedule. So maybe that's where that 10% comes from, and maybe they see the Lions have an easier way to go about it. But the reality is if the Vikings take care of the Bears, I'm trying to think about if we could give them another like random loss just because of that's how that happens. I guess essentially if the Vikings are able to beat the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions, I mean, you're going to have to beat the Lions. I don't think it's going to be unless the Lions really collapse. I don't see how you would be able to lose to the Lions in that final game and still be able to win the division. Again, mathematically, I'm sure it's possible, but it's probably very, very, very improbable. So that game will matter. But I think if you're in the situation where you beat the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions, you most likely will come away with the division because you will now give the Lions another loss. You would just need the Lions to lose one other game, and then I think that should do it. And you would probably, I don't know, because then you might, again, it depends on where the Lions lose. You might have the same divisional record, and then again, I don't know where the tiebreaker goes to. Do they look then at do they do like conference record first, or then point different? I honestly don't know. It's something that I haven't really had to ever really think about. So I'm not, if you guys know what it is, definitely let me know. But I still think that it's a very real possibility. What I'm really interested in, like on one side, from like a fan perspective, I'm really hoping that final game, Lions Vikings, like actually really matters, and it's like that game, whoever wins that game wins the division. Like from just a general fan perspective, like that's exciting, that's box office, that's like let's go January 5th, right? Like that's why it's even TBD, because it's like that's gonna matter. That time is like, oh yeah, let's go. It'll be frustrating if it's like, oh, the Lions already locked up their number 1 seed. Everyone's already locked up. We're just playing our backups now. And then it's like, well, that game no longer matters, because then like the Vikings are locked in their spot. The Lions are locked in their spot, and then it doesn't matter. On the other side, obviously, if you're a Vikings fan or a Lions fan for that matter, you want it to be locked up. You want to rest your starters. You want to get ready for the playoffs. You want that bye. Although, if one of these teams actually does lock in the bye, well, then it's really going to be wild, because then you're kind of in a position where it's like you might be playing hard in this week, January 5th, to get the bye. So you're going to be playing hard to get the bye, or you don't need to play hard because you've already locked it up. Then you kind of almost have like 2 buys. And then then that's like always the question mark of like, well, do you play some of these players? You don't want to get them to be too rusty. You want to keep them in shape. Like it's, it really becomes kind of that question of like, how do you manage that? So the Vikings are definitely, like, a bunch of these teams right now are in fascinating situations in terms of their schedule. And again, credit to the NFL. They know how to plan the schedule. They foresee some of these things happening. But I still think that the Vikings are in a great spot. I'm going to lean on them to take advantage of the Bears. The Bears are reeling now that they even got rid of Eberflus. They don't even have that defense working. I think Caleb Williams will be fine, honestly. But I think that should be a game that the Vikings should be able to win very convincingly. Again, I haven't 100% bought into the Seahawks. I'm not anti-Seahawks by no means or by no stretch of the imagination. It's just I think that the Vikings are a legitimate contender. And so I would just imagine, again, they're also going to take care of Seattle. And then that's when it takes you to the Packers and the Lions. And again, those types of gritty divisional games on the road and home, it's just going to come down to the wire, most likely. That's typically what happens here. I know the Vikings took care of the Packers weeks ago, but again, that was weeks ago. That was Jordan Love's first game after being injured. And so it's kind of hard to kind of have a lot of strong takeaways from that game as well. And again, like I said, the Lions game, who really honestly knows who's even going to be playing in that game. The more I look at some of these schedules and some of these teams that I have high hopes for, the more it just puts a smile on my face, because it's like there could be such a stretch of games where like you just know it doesn't matter. And even when earlier on the season, like even when the Vikings played the Lions, like, yeah, I was glued to my seat watching that game and going back and forth with it, but I still knew in the back of my mind, like, at the end of the day, this game doesn't matter. Like, if they lose, if they got rolled, if the Vikings got dominated by 30 points, like, yeah, it would not be good, and you'd have to try to find some of the positive, but at the end of the day, you would still know, it doesn't matter too much. Like, they'll still be able to, they can still right this ship. They can still, get together. Because again, they lost to the Lions, obviously, and look where they are. They lost to the Rams and still look where they are. But like, now we're really at that spot where it's like, okay, like it's time to take care of business. Like, it's truly up for grabs right now. Because they say it's a 10% chance to win the NFC North, and I'm looking at it where it's like they still got that chance to win the division. The conference. They got the chance to get that number 1 seed. So the Vikings will continue to be a team that I'm just like, let's go. And every game that they have now moving forward is definitely not a game that you could skip. Like, every game is like, let's go. And I didn't even realize that, because like I said, I can't remember every single team's schedule in any given moment. So when I just looked at that, I'm like, oh yeah, the Bears, let's go. The Packers, all right. The Lions, gosh, I hope that Lions game matters. And it's like, let's do it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Minnesota Vikings? What do you think their fatal flaw is? Are you concerned about the fumbles with Aaron Jones? I know I didn't really address that. I'm actually a little bit less concerned about it, honestly. I I'm just not concerned about it. I would be surprised if that really does come back to haunt them. I think it's been unfortunate, but I don't think it'll come back to haunt them personally, and I don't think it'll necessarily be a problem moving forward. Since it was such a concrete problem, I think there's going to be the big effort to like make it not a problem, but we'll see. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.